Tonight, we're getting a better picture of which parts of the city have the highest number of COVID-19 cases.
COVID-19 is present in every single neighborhood in Toronto.
It's the first time this kind of data is being made available. We'll break it down and tell you why it's important. Plus, the province moves to take control of more long-term care facilities as families come to terms with the disturbing details of what the military saw in some of them. And
it's not going to change unless they do something about it. Common sense does not prevail.
physical distancing circles are coming to Trinity Bellwoods Park, so park goers can enjoy the outdoors safely. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. The City of Toronto put out some data tonight which lets you see which neighborhoods are at the epicenter of Toronto's COVID-19 outbreak. Now, while the numbers show some pretty stark findings, especially here in North Etobicoke, one thing is abundantly clear. There are active cases of COVID-19 in every neighborhood. Chris Glover has more.
COVID-19 is impacting every Toronto neighborhood, but there are hotspots.
People living in the northwest and the northeast parts of the city now have the highest number of positive cases.
But Toronto's medical officer of health made clear this map doesn't indicate where people caught the virus, just where they live.
The reality is that you are at risk of getting COVID-19 anywhere.
Positive tests are soaring in places with high poverty rates and more recent immigrants.
The overarching message that we're seeing here today is that COVID is taking advantage of people's vulnerable living situations.
Joe Cressy, who chairs the Toronto Board of Health, says this info will lead to proactive testing, but won't lead to a patchwork of COVID restrictions in Toronto.
This will not lead to increased restrictions by any stretch in one neighborhood versus another, but rather increased prevention tools to ensure that we can tackle COVID-19 effectively.
The hope is extra vigilance and hotspots. The fear is complacency.
People who are not living in those areas of high cases of COVID-19 will relax and put themselves at higher risk of transmission.
This infectious disease expert also worries people could be stigmatized.
It's not that they're immigrants, it's not that they're lower income, it's those other risk factors that they have, the types of jobs and the number of people they're exposed to, the number of people in the household.
At the beginning of the outbreak, cases were more evenly distributed across Ontario, but Toronto neighborhoods combining with others in the GTA are now certainly the epicenter of the province's COVID problem. Analysis by CBC News shows more than 3/4 of Ontario's active cases are in the GTA, even though it represents less than half of the population of Ontario.
Brampton is one of those hotspots.
Brampton's mayor also announcing today officials there will soon reveal neighborhood hotspot data too.
I'm heartened to hear that we have their commitment to make that data available as soon as possible so residents know where there are areas of greater concern and areas where the virus seems to be circulating in the community at a greater rate.
You'll also remember some jurisdictions are beginning to collect more information when it comes to COVID cases, things like race and income, employment. Those details will help to shed even more light on who is being impacted during this pandemic. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
The City of Toronto is hoping to avoid a repeat of that overcrowding last weekend at Trinity Bellwoods Park. So tomorrow, it's going to draw the line. Dozens of them, in fact. Social distancing circles. Natalie Nanowski looks at whether that'll work.
This was Trinity Bellwoods today, and soon it will look like this. Giant circles set 2 meters apart.
Park staff will be in Trinity Bellwoods Park tomorrow painting circles on the grass of that park, which will both help to illustrate proper physical distancing and help with the measurements, but also help to ensure compliance in a place where we simply have to do better.
Better than having a repeat of Saturday, where thousands gathered, angering officials. Today, park goers said physical distancing circles are the way to go.
Should have been done sooner. It's not going to change unless they do something about it, you know? People get a mob mentality and then they descend on it, and it's like common sense does not prevail.
They'll feel more obligated to do it because there's like a visual representation of where they're supposed to be.
Experts say it shouldn't stop with circles.
My job is about parks, and I've been confused and anxious also about how to use parks and public spaces during this time.
To avoid some of that confusion, Jake Garrett would like to see some new signage in city parks, outlining exactly what type of activities are allowed.
Can we play ball with people? Can we have a conversation? Can we use, the slack lines in Trinity Bellwoods, which I know everybody loves so much?
Another tip, don't go to overcrowded places.
I get that people want to be outside. I just think that, we could spread out. I live near High Park, and High Park wasn't nearly as busy, so I don't know if we could move around a little bit.
So spreading yourself out in different parks, of course, is key, but the city is going to be monitoring some of the more popular ones, like this one, Stanley Park, to ensure that people are physically distancing here as well, and if not, the city could consider installing those social distancing circles. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario's police watchdog has been called in to investigate after a 29-year-old woman fell from her apartment balcony this afternoon near High Park. The Special Investigations Unit says Toronto police officers showed up at an apartment building near High Park Avenue and Bloor Street around 5:15 for a domestic incident. They say while police were inside a unit on the 24th floor, officers, quote, observed a woman on the balcony. A short time later, she fell and died at the scene. The SIU investigates any death, serious injury, or allegation of sexual assault involving police. An emergency crews rushed a man to hospital with critical injuries this afternoon after a shooting near Main and Gerrard. Police say they got word of gunfire just after 5 o'clock. When officers arrived, they found a man who'd been shot several times. He was rushed to hospital in life-threatening condition. There's no word on any suspects. And we now know the name of that man killed in a daylight shooting yesterday in the entertainment district. He's local rapper Houdini, whose real name was DeMargio Jenkins. The 21-year-old was shot on the street near King and Peter yesterday afternoon. A 15-year-old boy and a 27-year-old woman were also hit by bullets in what police are describing as a targeted attack. Now, news of Jenkins' death set off a wave of tributes from prominent musicians, including rappers like Tory Lanez and Meek Miles. Jenkins was considered a rising star in Toronto's rap scene. His songs were streamed nearly 20 million times on Spotify last year. Jenkins grew up near Jane Street and Driftwood Avenue, but more recently, he moved to Brampton with his family. Police haven't made any arrests, but yesterday, Police Chief Saunders described the killing as very solvable due to the number of witnesses in the area at the time and the amount of video evidence. The province is taking over 5 long-term care homes that have been hit hard by COVID-19. And Premier Doug Ford is promising to ramp up inspections in other nursing homes. Now, this all comes a day after Canadian Forces revealed horrific scenes in some of the province's long-term care facilities.
And now we're taking further steps to protect our most vulnerable. I'll tell you, there won't be a piece of dust on the floor that they aren't going to be inspecting.
Effective immediately, the province will assume control of 4 of 5 homes identified in the Forces report, all of those in the GTA. It includes Eatonville in Etobicoke, Hawthorne Place in North York, Altamont Care Community in Scarborough, and Orchard Villa in Pickering. Plus, there's a 5th one, Camilla Care in Mississauga. That's where 275 residents, it's 275 residents in those 5 homes have died of COVID-19. And families with loved ones in long-term care have been left with a sense of unease since that damning report came out. They're also now asking who'll be held accountable. Lisa Shing is following that story tonight, but first a warning, some of the images in her report are graphic.
Members of the military continue their work at Hawthorne Place. Their stay extended until mid-June. It's where Mary Simone's father, Frank, has lived for 4 years.
They tell me he's pulling through when I do call the home, and I hope it's true.
Others who have parents at Hawthorne aren't so positive. These are photos of a resident sent to us by her daughter showing what appear to be bed sores and bruises all over her body. She says this started long before the pandemic hit.
They're horrific. I don't even have words to explain how horrific they are to look at. I can't see how my mom's wounds are. Are they healing? Are they taking care of her? Are they feeding her? Are they changing her diaper? I'm angry, and I can't go see her. I can't advocate for her and I can't help her.
CBC isn't identifying her because she's afraid the treatment of her mother will get worse. She says she isn't surprised by yesterday's military report of disturbing treatment of the residents at Hawthorne and 4 other homes. Families have mixed opinions about where the responsibility lies.
If you are a PSW, your number one concern should be your compassion.
It's not the PSWs or the nurses' fault. It's the higher abouts.
The union representing 60,000 workers says they are paid far less than their counterparts at hospitals, and the homes are chronically understaffed. Many don't get benefits or sick days.
You're forced to hurry, and under those conditions, it's outrageous to have to hope that nobody gets hurt.
The industry is unregulated and generally underfunded, according to experts.
Who ends up taking this work? Often racialized women, new Canadians. It's very easy for us to point our fingers at these individuals, but I don't see people taking pay cuts and wanting to work in under-resourced environments. And frankly, if any of us were put in that situation, how well would we do?
We need the federal government. We need their support, their financial support.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the federal government is willing to work with provinces on revamping long-term care. Lisa Tishing, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, there is no end in sight to many COVID-19 restrictions. Now, under the province's orders, all public swimming pools are closed for at least the next 2 weeks. But given the humid weather we've had recently, many swimmers are wondering if they'll ever get to take a dip. Lorenda Redekop has more.
Reopening looks far away at city pools. Normally, they open sometime in June. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control says there's no evidence COVID-19 spreads through the water. Plus, chlorine would kill the virus. Experts say the problem is the crowds.
I don't see pools opening this summer. If we're still having the general idea that we're supposed to be physical distancing, I think it's impossible to have physical distancing in a pool with a bunch of kids playing.
She says the other issue is surfaces.
Are you going to be sanitizing a change room like every time there's a new group of kids coming through? And how are you going to keep kids from talking to each other or minding physical distance in the change room?
Beaches are open. Most people I talked to said they wouldn't feel comfortable at a pool.
At the beach, you can spread out more. I mean, obviously a bunch of people could roll up here and it could be crowded. I obviously wouldn't come today if it was anything like Trinity Bellwoods Park the other day.
For this brother and sister, it's a nice break from online schooling.
Really fun. We get to play at the beach instead of doing schoolwork, and then we go home to do school usually.
It's not too busy here. I find everybody's being very careful, so that I don't feel too worried here.
One group that monitors water quality wants the city to restart its bacteria testing at beaches.
All the people that were using the beaches in the last 5 to 10 years, and you add to that all the kids who aren't going to camp and people at home. So there's very few spots. And so, if you take those places away too, it's basically a summer without water access.
The mayor says the water testing will continue, and enforcement officers will be on the beaches to remind people about physical distancing. As for if pools could open, first, the emergency order from the province has to lift. Then it would have to be okayed by the Toronto Medical Officer of Health. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, a love story you have to see. He is in a retirement home, she's in a long-term care home next door. But COVID-19 has kept them apart. Coming up, how he is staying in touch in his own special way. Plus,
well, we get some gentle relief from the temperatures and the humidity the next couple of days. Not a big change. Showers and thunderstorms coming through as well. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. I'll give you the details on that, but the real change is coming for the weekend, and some of you are going to like this weather very much.
Time for a look at the forecast with meteorologist Colette Kennedy. It'll still be warm and muggy tomorrow, just not as warm and muggy as it's been.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Mike. Exactly. So we're seeing, first of all, kind of some subtle changes in terms of our temperatures and the humidity, and not necessarily any longer at the heat warning criteria. So coming down in kind of baby steps here. Next couple of days, though, changes in terms of we're going to get in some rain showers, but also in some cases, especially it looks like into Friday, some thunderstorms mixing in there. And then the big change is really going to be on the weekend. It's going to be a whole new air mass, and it's going to feel completely different. Still some very, very pleasant conditions as we look at that weekend. So you got to stick around for that. Heat warnings, of course, this is when we do have those temperatures in the afternoon that are just over 30 degrees, and we have the pretty significant humidex, plus the overnight lows need to be around 20 or just over 20 degrees. And so we're going to see kind of a release of that. Daytime highs today. Do you notice the hot spot? Again today, yesterday was a hot spot in Canada, the nation's capital. Today, even warmer temperature, but just the hot spot only in Ontario, because the winner of that award went into Quebec, so that heat is tracking a little bit more towards the east. This is the setup for Thursday, so certainly more cloud cover that we will be seeing. Some showers starting to move in the morning hours just along the tip of the north shore of Lake Erie, but then those are going to fill in as we get into the afternoon, and we'll see more rain coming in around the Niagara region from London and extending kind of just along the north shore here too of Lake Ontario. So we get into some rain showers into the afternoon hours. It's a little bit spottier for what happens into southwestern Ontario. You may see more significant stuff actually into Friday. So even into the evening, lingering a little bit. Now Friday is when the leading edge of this cooler air mass is coming. That's going to be more of a change. As that comes in, we'll see a line of showers and some thunderstorms developing midday. And then even once it passes through, there's some dry air behind, but then a shot towards the evening of some more showers around the GTA. In terms of the amounts, this is just Thursday, not factoring in Friday. Looks like around the Niagara region is where we could have the enhanced amounts. Your temperatures kind of similar to what they've been lately for your overnight lows in the high teens. Tomorrow afternoon, still looking at some upper 20s and feeling like we're in those low 30s with the humidex values. Same thing for the GTA in terms of the numbers for the overnight lows. And then tomorrow, slightly cooler than what it has been. And maybe, as I say, a little more of that rain coming towards, say, from Hamilton around towards about St. Catharines. Friday, the temperatures come down a little further, but much more so once that front goes through. And then the dew points come down, and you'll notice that it won't be nearly as sticky. And then look at those temperatures. I know some people find this too hot. I kind of like it. I think for those folks, here you go. The weekend tailor-made for you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Colette.
You're welcome.
Weather update is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a Trane.
Well, we know COVID-19 has hit seniors the hardest. There's the physical toll, considering the number of outbreaks at long-term care homes, but there's also a toll on their mental health. Now, one man in Oakville is committed to keeping his wife in good spirits, and it's all through song. Alice Chasson has their story.
Go home, go home, go home, whistle is calling.
This has got to be the most romantic story I've ever worked on, and it all starts at a resort on Vancouver Island in 1956.
Before she saw me, she heard me because I'm a singer, and I'd been out playing football, and I'd come back and I'd gone into the shower in the place. And when I was in the shower, I broke out in song. I started singing. And she said she could hear this voice. And it happened to be me. She was sitting there looking out over the water, and she had on a yellow sweater and plaid pants. And I liked what I saw, and I thought, I've got to get to know this lady.
Lois liked what she saw in David too, and what she heard, and has been hearing from the man who would become her loving husband of 62 years. They actually just marked that milestone, from his retirement living center and her in her long-term care home next door. They've been kept apart as the Oakville facility works to contain COVID-19 from spreading.
I had an iPad, and I was in the dining room with a bottle of wine and nice lunch, and my wife was in her room, and she had a nice lunch, and she had an iPad, and that's how we celebrated our 62nd wedding anniversary. She just looked radiant. It was just wonderful.
What a guy.
Yes, he is a character.
As sweet as this story is, there's also an opportunity here to talk about the mental health toll of the virus.
You know, my dad has been actually moments of being quite despondent. And I think a lot of families and seniors are experiencing this type of despondency. And as we get through this, we have to be so careful that we don't mess it up.
It's very difficult for my wife because the dear soul is suffering from dementia, and that takes its toll. But what I'm having difficulty with in here is trying it, and it's ripping me apart, is my wife's a half a block away and I can't even hold her.
And so 87-year-old David Rock leaves us with this message about wearing masks and physical distancing.
I'm calling them tools to help me see my wife sooner.
And of course, he leaves us with a little ditty.
I'll go home with Lois Colleen. I changed the words because those are my wife's name. And I sang that at our wedding reception, 62.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
What a wonderful story. Well, after the break, we'll bring you today's Frontline hero. Stick around for that. We'll be right back. A group of cousins have found their own way to give back during the COVID-19 pandemic. They've raised nearly $7,000 to deliver coffee and treats to hospitals, emergency personnel, retirement homes, even vets and pharmacies right across the GTA and beyond. And now they're expanding that project.
Hi everyone, Coffee for Frontline here at Extended Care Long-Term Health Care Facility. On April 24th, my 8 cousins and I got together, initially to check up on each other on a group chat during these uncertain times. What started off as a family check-in soon became a brainstorming session to discuss ways that we can give back to our community. We ultimately decided on Coffee for Frontline. This initiative was created to provide coffee and baked goods for our frontline and essential workers. We've broadened our scope to also assist individuals in need. It was becoming increasingly difficult to drive through our city and notice the extensive lineups of people who were waiting to pick up a hot meal or food from a food bank. We have recently made a large purchase of $900 to purchase food items to do a drop-off at our local food bank. We would like to thank everyone who has supported our initiative and who have generously donated. It is our mission to reach out and help as many people as we can in our community. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you're doing. If you'd like to share a story about your frontline hero, tag us on social or send us an email. And that is our newscast for tonight. Tomorrow on Metro Morning, we'll look at how some restaurant owners are being forced into being creative during this pandemic. The owner of Montgomery's restaurant on Queen West has pivoted into offering a new weekly grocery box featuring local foods. You can hear all about that tomorrow around 8:20 on Metro Morning. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.